Clockwork Revolution. I've been thinking about it recently because we've been hearing so much about Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, and that game looks to be a sham, a joke. Certainly not even close to the quality of Bloodlines 1, you would think. I would be very surprised if it reaches those heights. But Clockwork Revolution, it is being made by some of the same people who worked at Troika. That was the studio behind Bloodlines 1, and also Arcanum, which looks a little bit like Clockwork Revolution. Now, Clockwork is interesting. It's been 4 months since it was actually announced, somewhere around there. Microsoft have bought inXile Entertainment, as well as Obsidian, a bunch of different RPG studios. And inXile, who were the developer responsible for it, they have released a number of RPGs. You've got Wasteland 3, which I thought was pretty good. They released a spiritual successor to Planescape Torment, a bit middling. They've had The Bard's Tale 4, some other titles that maybe weren't super special. But I think inXile are a pretty good developer at the moment, because I really liked Wasteland 3, and it seems like Microsoft just want more games on Game Pass, so they're letting them concentrate on their strengths. Building an RPG that is hopefully of decent quality, rather than worrying about monetization, building a live service. Like we've seen with a lot of other single-player developers recently, like Arcane with Redfall. So it is nice to see that inXile are being allowed to make a traditional RPG, it seems like. But that's its own topic, because a lot of people, after Clockwork Revolution was announced, including myself, sort of thought, hey, this just looks like Bioshock Infinite, a reskin of that 10-year-old title. That was more of, I suppose you were hoping it was an immersive sim, but it felt more like a traditional FPS in some cases. Maybe not quite that, but it wasn't really the immersive sim we were probably hoping for. I think Bioshock Infinite had a great aesthetic. People were hyped, but I think as years went on, people felt a little bit underwhelmed. But Clockwork Revolution, it definitely looks similar. The media reaction, the general public, they sort of got the feeling that this was a shooter we were probably getting. But the lead people behind Clockwork Revolution, I've written down their names. You've got Chad Moore and Jason Anderson. So both of them were at Troika previously, making Arcanum, making Bloodlines 1. And they have said, this is not an FPS. It is not like Bioshock Infinite. It's not even that sort of immersive sim kind of cross between FPS, RPG, different genres. They have said it is a full-fledged RPG. And Bloodlines 1, Arcanum are the influences there. And that's really, really nice to hear. I think Arcanum is one of the best games ever. It's so unique in the RPG, the video game space, because you get so many RPGs that are sword and sorcery. Maybe you do get some science fiction games, but getting something that's quite unique in that steampunk faction, it's really rare. It's really something that I like. I love that setting. I love that sort of mixture between technology, fantasy, magic, and how it kind of blends together. And Arcanum did that really well, because you had a nice setting, but you also had a great story, interesting characters, music. The music was phenomenal. The atmosphere. I loved everything about it. You could say the same with Bloodlines. I guess what both those games shared was a little bit of jank and maybe the developer, Troika, not having enough time to truly make the games excel and not be flawed gems. I think flawed gems is how you would probably describe them. Not perfect, but their highs are extremely high. Their lows are pretty low as well. But I'll absolutely take them. I'll take more of them. So it was nice to hear that Clockwork Revolution is going to be a role-playing game. It's going to stick to these guys' strengths. They haven't been forced to do something else, it doesn't seem like. When is it coming out? I would be hopeful of maybe in the next 18 months. There's been a lot of cases of a game just being rushed out the door. We've seen that recently with something like Lords of the Fallen, where if they'd been given more time, it probably would have been released as a classic Souls-like. People would have been really getting behind it, but it was forced out the door because of investors, and you cannot get back that first impression. So I hope Clockwork Revolution is going to get the time. I think with some challenges with Starfield, obviously Redfall, that Microsoft will want to be getting games out there that do get that good public reception. So I don't really care if it's 18 months, 2 years, as long as they get it right. What I do want to see is the hub worlds. I want to see them back. They were great in Bloodlines, and I think it allows the developers to focus on quality over quantity. I'd prefer we don't just get some huge open world city. CD Projekt Red, while sort of 8 years from when development commenced to now, they have delivered, I think, on Night City. I think they did bite off a bit more than they could chew, and they burnt a lot of people on release, even if there's a decent game at the end of that process. Now, 2.0 is quite good. I would much prefer that studios do stick to the hub worlds when it comes to role-playing games, if that's going to give us the best chance of a really good RPG with quality quests that offer choice, different ways to approach them, level design. I much prefer the level design than just some sort of GTA-like, which it seems like developers really look into when they're developing a city kind of open world. So I hope that inXile are sticking to their strengths there. I don't think they would have referred to Bloodlines and Arcanum if they weren't thinking hubs, because neither of those games are really open worlds. I know in Arcanum you can go to pretty much any area of the map technically, a little bit like Baldur's Gate 1, where you can actually explore the full map, but the content is in set places. So I don't think we'll see anything like that. I think it's going to be those hubs. The reveal, though, it is a little concerning that the marketing team, whether it was Microsoft, whether it was inXile themselves, I don't think they really portrayed what the game was correctly, because even now, still people are talking about those BioShock Infinite comparisons. Some of those lead developers, Chad Moore, Jason, who I mentioned, they might have gone out and done some interviews and talked about how, hey, this is definitely an RPG, guys. We're not just making a BioShock reskin. That is fine, but most people are just going to see the reveal trailer. They're never going to look into it again, and it'll only be when there's gameplay, there's something serious to announce, that they're going to revisit it. So that first impression is going to stick. And right now, most people are not seeing an RPG. They are seeing some sort of FPS. I think they need to get that perception right. It is something that has burned other developers. I mentioned Arcane earlier with Redfall, and the problem with Arcane is they've released so many games over the years that were horribly marketed by Bethesda. Now, once again, Bethesda are owned by Microsoft as well. All this consolidation, it's getting a bit scary. But what I mean there is that Bethesda's Arcane's games were marketed in such a way that it seemed like we weren't getting immersive sims. We were getting first-person shooters. We were getting some sort of action game. It happened with Deathloop. It happened with Dishonored. If you didn't actually look into those games yourself, do your own research, you were essentially being told by Bethesda's marketing team that you were just going to get an action game. And I think that really undersold them. Prey, a big one with this, is it wasn't really clear what that game was going to be. There was the original Prey, which was an FPS, and then there's this reboot, the new Prey, the one that came out 2017, and when it finally released, I played it, and I'm like, hang on, this is incredible. This is a genuine immersive sim. It reminds me of System Shock 2, classic game. It's getting a remaster, I think, from Night Dive soon. Check it out if you haven't played it. It's very special. But playing that, I thought, no one told me that this is what we were going to be getting, and this is so good. And yet the marketing just let the whole team down. It sold poorly. I do not want to see that happen with Clockwork Revolution, because if it is genuinely an Arcanum-like, that would just be so, so special. I would buy that day one if it's of quality. I want to see more games of that nature. I think actually that Arcanum is now also owned by Microsoft. So this is getting scarier, because it seems like all the IPs that they're going with a handful of companies. But I guess if I'm being optimistic, maybe Microsoft could do something with the Arcanum IP as well, whether it's just re-releasing the game on modern systems, making it easy to play. I think you actually have to use fan patches to really play it properly. I played it a few years ago. I think I got it on GOG, but I do remember there were maybe some issues there. So perhaps we could see something done with Arcanum. That would be nice. If Clockwork Revolution is going to be a spiritual successor, though, that could maybe be the next best thing. And there's so much that they could do there. What I do want to see is inXile maybe look at what went wrong with Son of Arcanum and not repeat some of the mistakes. So, for instance, I don't want to see turn-based and real-time combat. I would want to see one or the other. I would expect, given the BioShock Infinite comparisons, that it's probably going to be real-time combat. It's going to probably be like the Outer Worlds in that the team behind the Outer Worlds were telling us that they were going to be making a traditional RPG. It was all going to be about the choice and everything quite old school, but it still obviously had that real-time action gameplay, and I think Clockwork Revolution will as well. That is fine as long as I think that they get the balance right. Make sure there are interesting skills. I want to see gunplay that makes sense for the character I build. I do want to see interesting choices, and that's why I like the hub worlds, because I think it really opens that up, the level design especially. I love in a hub like Vampire Bloodlines 1 or Deus Ex, for instance, Mankind Divided, where in the hub world you can design really intricate areas. For instance, you've got a building you need to get into, and you can really experiment with that. Maybe there is a metal bar you can pull off an area in the car park, and if you pull that off, you can get in. And that's sort of using your strength build. If you've got a strength-focused character, that makes sense. You might have the option to talk your way in. Maybe if you have athletics or a skill that's similar, dexterity, you're able to climb up a pipe or something and get through a window that's up there, or you can hack your way in depending on what era we are in. And I think when it's an open world, it's difficult to really add that much depth to all the quests. You start getting into fetch quest territory, it starts to get less interesting, even though I think Cyberpunk overall did a pretty decent job. But that took 8 years to make. I don't think Microsoft will allow inXile to spend 8 years on what will probably be a bit of a niche game. That's my opinion anyway. So this is a game I'm looking forward to. I hope they get the time that it needs. I hope we get some more information soon. I'm going to keep sort of checking this out. The developers seem excited, keen to talk about it, and that's why they've come out time and time again to really try and let us know that this is an RPG. Don't think it's going to be a Bioshock-like. I think they're saying that not just because they don't want to confuse people, because they are passionate about making this game, and I think it is something that they want to do. No one has pushed this onto them. It's a brand new IP. That is rare these days, so if they can do a good job, their resume suggests that they can. These developers I've spoken about, Chad and Jason, after Troika, they had maybe middling careers. One of them worked at Carbine, which was the studio behind the MMO WildStar. Can you remember that game? Don't think it did very well. Wasn't as impressive as was promised. And he obviously has now moved back to single-player games, his strength. So he's probably excited to be doing so, and maybe with the budget that they've now got, they're not under the thumb of, say, an Activision, who are publishing Bloodlines 1 and were desperate to get it out the door. Hopefully they are going to get that time. There's probably no excuses now. Get this right. Show us you can make a quality RPG, because the Outer Worlds, I think it was good, but I think it did let some people down in comparison to, say, a Fallout New Vegas, which people see as a genuine classic RPG. I don't see many people saying that about Outer Worlds. They say it's good, it's safe, but it's not really special. Hopefully Clockwork Revolution can be it. So I'll keep following it. Hopefully it's a really good one. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.